Hello and welcome to this episode of The Three Coaches. I'm Taty. I'm joined by Furn
Hey guys.
and Mac.
Hello.
And we're going to finish off breaking down our LCK series that we started the other day. So this is game 3 of Afrika versus KT. If you didn't see the first two VODs, I'd recommend watching those first. They're on our YouTube channel. That'll also give you a bit of background for the game, as well as seeing how the first two games played out. So other than that, we can just get straight into it if either of you have stuff for this jump select.
Okie doke. I mean, it's a really non-standard draft from a lot of perspectives, I think. First of all, for this series, I'll start off with Afrika, I guess. So I think Zyra is a really strange first pick most of the time. I'm really surprised that KT, maybe they have information that Marta doesn't play like Misfortune support or something, although that's like not so common anymore. It's still like the hardest counter that exists to this lane, especially once you've seen Zyra Jhin. I would have thought that Ashe, really good matchup into Jhin, goodish matchup into Zyra, and important to take away from the Zyra. That's part of the reason why they take the Ashe. And MF, who has really good matchups into both of them, would just be like super given. Like you're mega happy with that bot lane. The other thing, Afrika picks Graves with Jhin, which I'm not a big fan of in most comps because you really lack sustained damage. Like if Jhin and Graves are in a team fight and they're reloading at the same time, like good luck. Especially if the other enemy team has like a really tanky comp, right? Which perhaps is part of the reason why KT picks Karma, but I'm really surprised by the Karma pick. Like they have push advantage, but Karma doesn't even have a good matchup into Zyra, so it doesn't seem like a good matchup.
It must be that they know he just doesn't play MF, right? Because we saw literally, I think maybe even on the same day, or maybe it was the day after, this exact thing with SKT, except from they did pick the MF, and it's just an absolute nightmare for the Jhin Zyra lane.
Yeah, I think like it literally must be the case, and that explains why you see the Karma pick there rather than later, because if they only play Nami, then of the like considered top tier meta supports that can lane into Zyra Jhin and like have push advantage right now, Nami doesn't, but you've basically got Nami and Karma as good responses with the Malzahar and the Lulu. You could go for like something like maybe like a Tahm Kench or something, but that's not really good into Jhin Zyra. Like it's better into stuff like Malzahar. So maybe that's like exposing a weakness in Marta's champion pool. It's also mega weird to see Shen drop that late into a draft. Normally he's like a super high prior pick, but yeah, like it would be standard from like what we've seen so far this series for KT to lock a mid laner instead of the Karma there. From what we've seen so far, I feel like maybe they didn't even have to pick Elise there. Although Scores Elise is really good, they have a lot of options right now. Like Rengar's up, Lee Sin is up, Kha'Zix is up, and Elise is up. So I would have let jungle drop there and just picked duo lane, or picked I don't see the reason for the Elise pick.
Well, I think the premise behind it will be more to allow Shen to have pressure by having outright the strongest pre-6 jungler, right? Is the jungler that's the best from 1 to 5 in terms of the outright pressure she can put down. And I think applying pressure to the Shen lane and allowing Shen not to be stuck under his tower when the time comes. This might not happen anyway, but in this particular instance, because it's Gragas, so it's not like he's going to get super punished. But I think the premise is behind it. So if you can enforce that and you can ensure that, and you ensure that Shen's not ever going to get ganked by Graves because your match ganks are better pre-6, allow Shen to get to 6 with a significant kind of standpoint where he's able to use ult effectively around the bot side of the map, which is probably inevitably what they're going to do with regards to using the Ashe pick in its best.
Yeah, I mean they do have a strong bot side of the map, and like Ashe Karma into Jhin Zyra is still decent. And with the Elise pressure, you have a lot of kill pressure, so like it's a pretty simple comp from KT's perspective, and they have a lot of shielding. But I feel like in the late game they're going to struggle for damage compared to Afrika because yeah, you can pump all your shields onto the Ashe and she can do teamfight damage, but she's not like a mega late game hyper carry, and Afrika is just like bursting with DPS champions. I like the Victor as a pick to complement like the Jhin Graves because like I said, you really need high sustained DPS, like a mid lane mage that can pump out a lot of spell rotations to be able to like make up for the lack of sustain and like the kind of erratic DPS profile from Graves and Jin. But they certainly have a lot of damage, so it's kind of like shield comp versus damage comp, which is quite an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, they got a lot of zone control and like long range siege potential as well with Zyra, Gragas, Victor. Zyra, Jin, Gragas, Victor. It's so much like we're going to choose when we open up, and it's going to be difficult for you to stop us. Whereas KT is much more about like pick and get on your face with Shen Elise. So yeah, it's been really interesting, especially considering how game 1 and 2 went and how like different they were from each other.
So, I feel like if the Ashe dies this game, then KT is going to be in such a rough spot. And they have a lot of pick tools for the Ashe, right? Like, there's only so often that Karma can Mantra E and that Shen can use his ulti, but like the pick tools that Freaka have are on a very low cooldown, like the Zyra root, the Jin W, the Gragas body slam, even like the amount of poke they have from all those champions. I really like the Freaka draft.
So what are both of these teams going to look to be doing? Firstly, in the first like 5-10 minutes, but then also in a more general sense, like as their whole comp, what are their sort of goals for each team?
I mean, Afrika are very much the way they like to play the game is very much like skirmish style anyway, and I think this comp suits that very heavily. Like they have a bit of everything. They're pretty good at getting picks. They have like not the strongest early game pressure, I would say. Like Victor pre-first back can be a bit of a lane bully to start off with, to be fair, and he has a good matchup into the Orianna. And then like he can't get punished mega hard, and so he gets a decent back off. So overall, I'd say Afrika's team comp is going to be way better at team fighting just because of the amount of like AoE damage it puts out, which the Shen and the Orianna both put out single target shields, and when you're fighting against like Graves, Zyra, Victor, the amount of AoE damage they put out is just obscene, and there's no shielding that, right? And like Furn said, KT is just way more about picking. They're going to look to like see the Shen through the rough patch pre-6, try and push out the Victor to get a good back for the Orianna, and then if they can like achieve those two things, then they have a really easy time diving the bot lane because Jin Zyra is very immobile. So that's kind of their like early game win condition, and Afrika's is the opposite of that, basically, to pressure the Shen lane and to get the Victor to his 1,200 gold back, and then probably try and force something on the other side of the map, like keep the Shen under his tower, stop him from being able to make plays bottom side.
I think the early game for KT is much easier to execute and much more reliable than Afrika's. A lot of Elise comps are like this, but her ability to ensure that your top side pressure can't be matched, and if it is matched by Graves, more often than not you're going to win that out, and then being able to transition the top pressure into kind of pseudo mid pressure by hovering around that top side of the map and forcing Victor to play bot side, forcing Victor to be slightly wary pre first back. He wants to go back and get that hex core, and that's going to be kind of coincided with when KT are really looking to make bot side plays, and if Victor doesn't then have the pressure by that point, and Elise can get around bot side with the use of Shen ult, their ability to dive is very, very easy with how easily Elise, just as a champion, can set up dives by repelling and losing aggro. So I think the early game from KT is significantly stronger with regards to setting up for what they want to do. But if they don't manage that, then Afrika's comp's very well rounded at siege and towers come mid game.
Okay, cool. So we'll just jump into it.
Yeah, KT have to basically make every arrow count. If they don't manage to kill the spot lane a few times, then just like the raw damage output from Afrika, I think, is going to roll over them.
So you've talked about it both briefly in the chat select, and we talked about it if anyone saw some of our ESL final breakdowns. But you mentioned the fact that Victor wants this 1250 first back, which is obviously a lot more than most people. How does that factor into how they play the lane and how the jungle is going to play the lane as well? Because Orianna obviously scales probably just as well into the late game. So do they really want to try and punish this first back, or is it just sort of irrelevant?
If there's any way you can delay it, it is fine. I don't think it's necessarily huge kind of punishment that you can really put out on this, because I think a lot of the time Victor will know that Elise is playing top side of the map, and Kuro will be intelligent enough to play to the bot side of his lane. So I think it's quite difficult to fully punish that, but I think you can definitely pressure the lane and force him to not have as smoother transition into that 1250 gold as he otherwise would have. And if you can get some kind of gank off, the objective should definitely be to just force Victor back, not necessarily to kill Victor or any more than that, just force him back pre 1250 gold so that he's either not spending any gold and sitting on that 1250, he's going to come back to lane with no more strength than he did have, while Ori comes back with like a lost chapter or something. And if that happens, you delay Victor quite huge with regards to him hitting those item breakpoints.
Yeah, although the Victor, like I said, can be like a bit of a lane bully in the very early levels, like his level 1 trades are way better than most other mid laners. I think Ori does have the advantage in the push just because of the ability to shield herself and like the fact that her auto attacks are slightly empowered by her passive. So if you can, at some point of the game, like if any point, because like bot lane or top lane trades badly or the jungle shows there, and you get 2 lanes of push, like in mid and top side, and the Elise can invade, then you can stop the Graves being able to show on the Victor lane to help push out, because you know where he is, and he'll be like afraid to get counter ganked mid. And like Furn said, if you can just keep the Victor under his tower, basically, and if you can get like a good push on a cannon wave, force him under his tower so he has to sit there and farm the cannon for however many tower shots it takes plus the rest of the wave, and then you get Orianna like a forced recall on 900 gold or like even on 1,000 gold is really frustrating for Victor. And then he'll put out significantly less wave clear after that point, and you want that plays quite heavily into KT's win condition of being able to make plays around the bottom lane. If they can free up the Orianna by getting her a better back and getting her more lane pressure than the Victor because he doesn't get his upgrade, then they can make collapses happen but way easier. And it's an Infernal Drake, so it's like double.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we talked about Elise wants to play on the top side of the map. Does the Infernal Drake, is that important enough to change that? Do we just leave the Shen?
No, you just play it. It's just an extra thing to get when Shen does make this level 6 play, right? It's It gives more value to the play, if anything, and actually makes KT even stronger. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? I've never seen this game before, but you can predict exactly what's going to happen, and this is exactly it. This is where the pressure should be. This formulates and transitions very well into KT's plan, and I think if this continues, it's very, very tough for Africa to do what they want to. As we know, Graves is going to find it hard to match the Elise in these early ganks. His lack of CC, his Elise being a champion that has 6 abilities at level 3 as opposed to every other champion bar Nidlee's 3. It gives you like more access, or a huge amount of access to extra damage output and kind of utility for the gank, which other champions just don't have at this point in the game. And that's why Elise is so strong pre-level 6. But then effectively she doesn't have an ultimate, so that kind of balances out when that occurs. But pre-level 6 she's crazy strong.
Pawn's just got a huge advantage in this lane, having pushed the Victor back there. I think Victor really wants to recall now. He's out of pots. I mean, the Orianna is as well. Yeah, there's the Graves coming in to help him. I'm kind of surprised that Pawn didn't actually back on the wave before. Like, before we saw him harassing, he had a pretty big wave pushed into the Victor's tower. I'm pretty surprised he didn't back, like, just straight away on there. But nonetheless, he's going to get a pretty advantageous recall off, which is a big factor for this game, especially now that Katie's got a kill in the top lane. The Shen's going to be able to pressure the Gragas. Like, he's playing Cowl into double Doran's ring right now. He does not give a damn about magic damage. He does not care. He's going to out-regen this Gragas. So the Shen from now is basically going to be free to push, and it's going to be pretty hard for the Graves to come and gank him because he's going to be pretty healthy and he's going to be out-trading the Gragas most of the time, I think. So that really, really plays into the win condition of being able to free up the Shen and being able to use the Shen ult to dive bot now.
This lane, this bot lane, is hugely less powerful than it ever was when Zyra was pre the nerfs. I think it was 7.3, where her plants auto attack the nearest minion or nearest object now, as opposed to prioritizing champions. This lane used to be really, really powerful, but now you really don't get much more power in terms of an outright lane matchup than Ashe Karma. For the raw laning phase, Ash's ability to spam volleys, Karma's ability to just outright damage, put out more damage than any other support in the game at this point. That's kind of in current meta, while also providing utility for Ashe to take trades which are naturally going to favor her due to your ability to gain shield and move speed. It really, really punishes kind of scaling lanes much harder.
He just takes no damage already.
Yeah,
it's really sad.
pretty tough gank.
This is correct move by Spirit though. If he can, like, he's done his job there. Even though they didn't get the kill on Shen, Shen can't. Effectively, KT are waiting for this level 6 on bot lane, right? And you're gonna see them get ready to open up. They're zoning this bot lane. This bot lane is very, very weak with regards to the pressure that they have. So KT have got complete control of this bot lane and can look to freeze, look to push.
Yeah, they're looking
fancy.
to slow push. I think they're setting up a
Yeah,
play here.
they're setting
I
up
think
a.
Def's going to hit 6 off next wave, and
exactly.
they're going to fire an arrow.
And this is exactly that was what Spirit was aiming to do there by forcing Shen back, right? Is that he can't ult away when he's chunked or under his tower, right?
Yeah.
So,
or at least if he does ult now, like had the play been called there, if he ulted there, he would at least lose some waves to his tower, lose some damage on it. But I think KT's going to get this play off. No, they're not going to make it on this cannon wave, I don't think. Well, the cannon wave's already at tower. I would have thought they'd have done it there when Graves showed top, actually.
Okay,
there's the Shen ult.
Yeah. Well, see how easy this is to execute. I don't know.
I mean, Marta can literally face tank the tower, and it doesn't even matter.
And that's exactly what we were talking about in Champ Select.
Yeah,
right?
of course. So what's the response to that? So we can see it. Obviously, we get to see everywhere. They can see that the Afrika call should have been obviously that KT's slow pushing the bot wave. Everyone knows this is coming, but what can you do to stop that?
It's realistically very tough. The options you've got is you.
Well, Marin's actually walked down. He's just a bit late.
There's a couple of things. Sometimes you can match the play, in as much as obviously they're making a play under your tower. So if you can match with equal numbers, if you notice it's going to happen and Graves can get there in time with the lease, and you can also TP your top laner into that too, and you match the 4v4. Yeah. Dependent on the situation with regards to what champions you have and the item breakpoints they're at, that's one option. One option that I've seen experimented with in scrims anyway is the old like late swap where you swap after the resistances of the tower after 5 minutes of bot lane tower are kind of remade or refortified the tower, so to speak. You late swap your bot lane into the Shen and you kind of attack the global so that Shen can't make this kind of play. And that's something that I've experimented with. But this, in this particular instance, Infernal Drake's up. So they don't want to swap away from the Infernal because they'll just end up trading towers and lose the Infernal, which could well happen anyway by the looks of it, because they were able to execute that. But it looks like by the way that Marin positioned is that their premise was to try and match their play as opposed to make a play of their own, which as
they
you
were
can
just
see,
a bit behind as well.
Well, yeah, I think it wasn't considered that this bot lane would fall this far behind, and Zyra didn't have access to ultimate at the same time as Karma did. Because if Zyra has access to ultimate under that tower, it's much more difficult for you to make that kind of stand there, tank 3 hits, and then walk away kind of play, because you normally get locked down for much longer, and you could have actually probably seen a trade there if that was the case. But because KT saw the window where Zyra didn't have ult yet, and she still hasn't got ult yet, even she's still only level 5, so they saw that window, and that was the window they had, so they had to execute that play within that kind of narrow window, and that was the pressure that was put out.
Oh dear. I think the other play that you could potentially make is to get the Graves to come mid to shove the Orianna in under using the cannon wave, and then free up the Victor to move so that you at least have Victor there before Orianna, and he can try and clear out the wave. Or you can just try and match on the other side of the map. Like Furn said, you're going to lose in terms of like the Infernal Drake there, but it might even be like, is it better to trade tower for tower plus Infernal Drake rather than nothing? Yes. Like, I mean, nice dive actually.
They played really well around the TP cooldown of Shen right there.
Wait. Did he have his ult up? Or was it? Does it like just
I'll
off
jump back.
on cooldown?
Yeah, it's on cooldown.
If it was just off on cooldown, that's crazy good.
Yeah, it's if you look at it.
Oh wow, it's like 2
Holy
seconds.
moly, yeah.
Yeah, that's insanely good.
And the
Well, that's
flash
probably
rate.
why Dev thinks he's safe to stay here. Safe to stay here, right?
Yeah, because he
Because
thinks
his support's coming, his mid has
Yes, it's
pressure.
up there.
Shen ult's in 2 secs. Wow, that's rough.
If that was timed, that's disgustingly good from Africa.
Yeah, that's pretty god
I'm
tier.
sure it would have been timed, but whether they executed the play knowing that it was only going to be a split margin to make that play,
Yeah,
that would have been very, very good and a high level macro. But
they have a really nice counter roam here though. They don't have a tower to fall back to. Pawn doesn't have ulti though, so but he's still going to be able to cut these guys off.
he's got
And
red
there's
buff
Shen ult.
too, so
Now
it's
there's
quite
Shen
hard to
ult.
get away.
Yeah. And that's the problem about, making counter plays in a lane that with a tower you just lost. That's why very rarely do you see people actually put their bot lane back in the lane where they just lost a tower, because these kind of plays are so easy to make from a mid laner perspective. Like if you see a Jhin and a Zyra overextending up to there and you have mid lane pressure, you're rubbing your hands together with glee right now as a mid laner.
The very long lanes are very tough when you've got something like a Zyra support and immobile AD carry like Jhin too. For you to ever actually survive that kind of play.
Oh, this is nice play from Smeb. I'm really surprised Deft is leaving mid lane here. Like he should just be pushing the wave. Wow. Yeah, he's pretty big. Smeb's picked up all of the kills. Wow, I didn't even realize he picked up 3 of the kills, and he's been involved in 100% of the team's kills.
Yeah,
Like this
so-
early game is insanely good from KT.
Yeah. So we saw this in the second game as well. They just snowballed so cleanly. But I mean,
Yeah.
it all comes down to it seemed like Afrika did know that first play was coming. Like Marin was walking bot, but they were just
Yeah.
sort of like 20 seconds or not even that,
Yeah.
10 seconds behind the play. And then you just snowball from here. So what Afrika should have done is send their bot lane top and just not try and make that dive. Like you then can't abuse Shen's ult going down, but it's not worth it,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, Marin could have just recalled earlier. I think if he'd recalled a tiny bit earlier, maybe he'd have been there. But realistically, although you're going to lose the Inferno Drake, I do think it's worth taking the trade of swapping your bot lane top preemptively. Because like the way that the early game went, you're just not going to have mid pressure because your Victor didn't get his Hex Core upgrade. So as soon as that happens, it's really hard for you to ever match the play because you're just not going to have mid pressure. And your bot side jungle is going to be warded, so Spirit's not going to have a good route down to the bot lane. So I think it would have been better for them to swap. And yes, you lose the Infernal Drake, but that comes at a price for the enemy team. Although it's a great objective, they do lose some tempo. So maybe you can rotate for like the mid lane push, or maybe you can like try and get some damage onto the tier 2 tower, or maybe you just get vision control or something.
And you're
But
losing
it's
it
better
anyway.
than nothing. Yeah, like it's better than nothing.
So what is the play for Afrika here to sort of stop this snowball going so fast? Because if they put their bot lane top, surely the same thing's just going to happen again.
Yeah, it's pretty tough right now. For
They can answer
Africa.
one because Marin has TP up. So if they're on point with it, they can answer one play. But the thing is that
It takes
Smeb's
so long to get there.
Smeb's so big now as well that even with the Gragas into the Shen, which is supposed to be a good matchup until like 20 minutes at least for the Gragas, he's going to get beaten up really badly. So it's
This is
It's
a lot
not a
of
good way.
why we see the Elise as well. Like I know we were slightly questioning why the Elise so early with regards to this draft, and this is it. It's because they knew that in those 2v2s or with regards to the pressure Elise can put out, they can get Shen ahead significantly. Okay, they probably weren't expecting a 305 Shen at 15 minutes, but they were expecting to have a lead, and
So
understand what you do with
they're
that lead. Yeah.
They're picking Elise with the thought of taking Shen, even though they don't take Shen for another. After another 2 bans.
They're picking Elise with the thought of making top lane have a significant lead, whether that's Shen or whether that's something else that's going to be a very teleport based user. They're picking Shen with the premise of playing around bot lane by using the top lane lead, transferring pressure from your top side of the map immediately into the bottom side, and that's something that's very common in pro play right now, and has been for a little while since First Blood Tower was kind of really invented.
Oh my god, that spider! Just lost like half Jin's health. Jeez.
This is like the biggest outright damage spike of Elise when she hits haunting guys. It's
Yeah, going back to the draft point, I think that what they may not have been intending to pick Shen because, like I said, it's really rare to see Shen drop that late into the draft. But KT's always been very comfortable to just blind pick Orianna for pawn. That's something they've always done, and I think they almost definitely went into this draft with the intention of counter picking top. So the Shen could have been like a Renekton, which like Renekton Elise is one of the most terrifying 2v2 bully lanes in the history of League of Legends. So like I'm sure they had a lot of options planned for that. But yeah, Furn's right. They definitely would have been thinking about the top side pressure because they like to counter pick top lane for Smeb.
And this is something that we talk about quite often. Like it's when you get a lead in one of the side lanes, it's sort of, well, easy is probably not the right word, but it's definitely doable to get both these towers down quickly. But then you're moving into the mid tower is often where teams stumble. The mid tower is already almost dead here. Is that just due to the fact that they got that forcing pawn, Kuro back, sorry, before 1250 gold? Because he's just basically been sitting under his tower the whole game.
Yeah, I think because because they've had so much jungle pressure this game because like Spirit's jungle has been really heavily invaded by Score for the whole game. He's had a lot of wards in there.
You can see an Elise has got more farm than Graves at level 10, which should never happen. So
it's not fun.
You can tell.
But like they've just had constant mid pressure this game. Like Pawn has always been able to shove and roam first, and Kura's been trying to match the roams, which like you should do. Nice dive.
At least
not much they can do there. But yeah, Kura's been trying to match the roams and kind of sacking off waves into his tower, which means that it just naturally takes damage. And Pawn's been pushing up at it constantly. This is very much the style that KT likes to play. They like to play like the full court press style where you just shove every lane. And yeah, they got it this game.
You can't make mistakes against some team like KT either. Like Jin committed slightly longer than he should have in terms of taking top lane tower, and they're thinking, oh, okay, we're probably just going to trade the tower for, and then come back to defend mid tier 2. But there's a miscommunication there, or a mispressure where Gragas and Victor feel like they can stay under tower and clear one more wave to allow Jin to get it to come back and then meet at tier 2. But actually you can't do that. You can't spread your resources that thinly against a team like KT with this kind of lead, because they will punish you the instant you do that. And as you see immediately, Elise comes behind the tower, cocoons Victor, one shots the Victor, then they go on the Gragas 2, they kill the Gragas, you lose 2 towers and 2 kills for just the tower and top side, which actually just funnels resources, because it's the top side of the map and Baron's going to be spawning in 150, it just funnels resources into whoever needs it most, and this Ashe is the one that, out of their team, it has the lowest farm, has the longest way to go with regards to hitting damage power spikes, so it's just a kind of channel of free farm that's going towards Ashe right now. So it's actually fine for them to lose that tower.
I think they're going to lose an inner for this. Like they're just desperately trying to trade anything. I mean, maybe the Gragas can ulti the wave.
And that's only because of the starting on Rift Tower.
No, Marin.
Exactly, resources are being spread too thinly again. Africa seem like, because Marin can't be that far up if you're investing triple resources into bot lane, right? And because that happens, you don't get away with stuff like that against someone like KT. They're not gonna allow you to do that and not punish you. And this is a
they're all body blocking the minion wave from the last Jin shot.
Yeah.
That was, wow, I've never seen people do that before. Body block the Jin, like, take me instead.
It's so far ahead.
Wow. It's very disgusting.
So the other thing to mention, yet again, is even though they do have 13 kills, there's never been a play that KT have made for a kill.
No,
it's still all
the kills. The 13 kills show how badly Africa have played in this game compared to the previous ones, right? And as much as they've presented themselves they've presented KT opportunities to get kills as byproducts of their macro game, and by that I mean they've tried to defend the indefensible and ended up costing their lives for doing so. Because once an objective's indefensible at a pro level, they'll take the tower, the dragon, whatever it is, even if you try and stop them anyway. And if you try and stop that, then you'll die, and they'll take the objective. So that's just the byproduct of the 6 towers and the 2 drakes that KT have got. Are those 13 kills?
Okay, so 7k gold lead already. Is there anything that Afrika could do? I mean, so Graves already got 4 kills. That's fairly helpful, although still 3 kills down.
I mean,
There's a opposing jungler.
like, it's such a long play for them to get back in now, right? Because normally your win condition back into the game would be kind of like either win a big team fight, which is super unlikely right here, just because of the goal differential and like the vision advantage that KT has, and the fact that even if you do take a team fight, if they're going to be pushing minion waves into you, then you're going to lose something for it anyway. If they're playing properly, like you'll have to choose between fighting them 5v5 and taking a minion wave. So like you'll still lose gold off the back of it on some level. Or your other player is kind of getting a pick, but that's so difficult against Orianna, Karma, and Shen that you have to make the perfect play like 3 times in a row right here for it to actually work. Like, although they get death through the Shen ult actually, so and that's because Pawn wasn't in mid lane right there.
Yeah,
and KT was playing pretty far up there without like.
It's very
Should we
tough
jump
for
back and see
Afrika.
how that
Yeah, go on.
is?
Yep.
Because...
Yeah, Pawn's up in the top wave.
So they're clearing
And
vision.
Def, why'd you walk through there? Like, why is he so far up? Oh my god. And
He just thinks he's safe.
Marta's Mata is like off to the side. Pawn's off to the side. He gets close enough for Spirit to literally dash into his face, which is pretty disrespectful. Like,
yeah, it's a mistake, no doubt about it. But these are the kind of ways that Afrika have any chance, is finding outnumbered situations or situations where they can invest resources without getting punished elsewhere. And that it is much easier to do when you're down to just your inhib towers, because there's realistically less for KT to get on the map with regards to like free standard objectives, right? So it is easier to do that when you can make these riskier plays when there's not so much to lose for doing them. And that's kind of what Afrika have got to do now. They've got to search for KT mistakes and punish very heavily when someone like Deft does something like he just did. We saw Pawn out of position earlier, and he also died for it too. So it's not just the kills though. That's not the real kind of point in that. It's that when you get the kill, it enables you to okay, you're 6k down, but one member is more than 6k's worth of gold. So they can't still fight you 4v5 unless they play it incredibly well. So it's trying to find a pick like that and then transition that into an objective.
But when they're this far down, it's just sort of take that one pick and then just that gives you an extra minute or so.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a stall. Like, they weren't able to actually get anything off of the pick, right? But in fairness, stalling for Freaka is good. Like, the Graves outscales Elise really heavily. Victor's scaling is disgusting, and so is Jin's. Like I said, they have a comp which does an insane amount of damage in the late game. And if in a late game scenario they can pick the Deft, like the Ashe again, then, like I said in Champ Select, this whole comp falls apart because you have no one to actually deal like consistent sustained damage and no one to throw all your shields on that can sit there and tank people, like. And be super efficient at like utilizing all of the extra HP you give them, because the rest of the champions are just about burst and they have like one spell rotation which they will chuck and then not do anything for the next so many seconds. Orianna less so, but you need your ADC with a shield comp is the long and short of it. So every time that picks like this happen, more and more so into the late game, if Freaky have like a bit of a way back in, that was nicely played.
Spirit.
These kind of just rushed, outnumbered situations are the ones that Afrika need to find. But they can't commit too heavily. They will get turned even with that if they.
Yeah, this is really good for them though, because they get a lot of mid pressure off of this. KT just like they all straight ran into the jungle, and Victor just stayed mid to clear the wave, so they're going to be able to get like a nice mid tower press off of this. And even if KT come to defend right now, the Graga should show and threaten the barrel to knock them away, or the body slam flash. Oh, the wave died too quickly. They're just going to do it on the next wave. Yeah, but free mid tower there. So that's a pretty good way back in for Afrika. Pawn and Deft, I do have a habit of overstepping. If you're going to pick anyone on KT to pick on, it's got to be Pawn.
For sure. And these are... on the kind of contrary to what I said about KT not having anything to take, there's obviously a lot for Afrika still to take with regards to towers there.
Standing
And
gold.
the mid tower there, for instance, was very easily an easy pickup after you do get some kind of pick like they did around topside. So there are more ways back into it than you think for Afrika, but it still relies on KT making mistakes, and they've made a couple in a row, and that would be something that really would trip them up if they played SKT in Worlds Finals, right? They wouldn't be in the situation where they're 7k up at pre-20 minutes, and those kind of mistakes give the best teams huge kind of swings in gold. So that would be something that they really need to shore up if they are going into kind of, well, we expect them to be one of the best teams in the world, so that's where they're headed.
And also, it just becomes, when you're this far behind, Afrika just going for because that was a very risky play from Spirit there, going to fight the Orianna with knowing the Shen's coming in.
Yeah, when you're a certain point behind, you have to take a lot of risks. And
oh dear, oh, there's the AOE we were talking about.
Oh god!
Yeah.
Holy moly!
Okay, so we'll go back and watch the setup for that as well.
Yeah, so you have to take these kind of risks or these engages that may otherwise not work. But we have said Afrika's comp does do better as this game goes on. It is something that's progressively stronger. But for a lot of this early game, it was significantly weaker, and KT have allowed the mid game kind of swing to go back towards Afrika's favour, or give them some kind of chance of getting back in this game, which they probably shouldn't have otherwise.
So the setup for this fight, Afrika are looking for the fight. We've already seen Marin's ping come out, so he's going back just to get the home guards.
Yeah.
This is all because of one ward. This whole thing is because Afrika managed to sneak one single ward into the Wraith Bush. If that ward isn't there, this fight can't really happen.
You can never get that flank.
Yeah, and that's just a case of, you've got 2 level 9 sweepers on your team. You just need to sweep better, or if you're not going to sweep, you have to be timing wards. Like, you have to be really conscious of the fact of, have they been in our jungle at all in the last 3 minutes? And if the answer is yes, and you haven't swept it, then you shouldn't be in the river pushing like this. When they see Marin recall,
even though
they literally see him recall. Yeah, they literally see him recall in the middle of the lane. Why else would he possibly do that when Smeb is where he is? They have to be going for a TP flank right now, and KT doesn't seem to be backing out. And maybe they think that they can maybe they're assuming that they don't have good enough TP flank wards, and that if they come from head on, the Shen will be enough to deter them. But that's obviously a big mistake.
And they can't rely on the gold lead to...
Not against this comp.
Not if you can get an outnumbered situation, right? I know Shen can ult in, but the ult for the duration is just a shield. And against this comp, you're gonna die before that shield comes out. We said there's 2 very burst reliant AD champions in Graves and Jhin, and then a massive AoE control mage, 2 control mages effectively of Zyra and Victor. So Shen ult isn't really going to do much other than transition him into the fight. And if you're already CC'd by the time Shen ults, it's too late. What KT should do here is be more respectful to Afrika and realise that there's actually nothing Afrika can do by posturing mid, apart from set some kind of fight. And they should move back towards where Marin's where that TP ward is. Obviously they don't know that ward's there, but they should give up some element of river control until Shen has full pressure on bot side, because when Shen's engaged on hitting that bot lane tower, you're going to have a situation where Marin's going to have to go there. And if Marin has to go there, he's going to be stuck under tower versus Shen. Shen can cancel TP if Marin tries to do that, and he's going to be constantly pushed in forever, because Shen's going to have some fire cape, he's going to have Tiamat, and he can constantly shove this wave out and shove into Marin's tower, and then you can regain vision control because you know that you're the stronger 4v4. But you have to play that kind of seesaw game of let the top laner get the pressure first, and then we make the river control move. Not the top laner doesn't yet have pressure and still try and control the river. It's too greedy, even with the gold lead.
And speaking of the gold lead, remember that I think 7 kills on score right now and 3 on Smeb. These are not members of your team that scale well into team fights. This is not how your team comp works. We said this is a mid-game team like pick comp essentially with Shen for safety, so that the Shen can split push. But you don't really want to be posturing for fights like this right now. Like it doesn't matter how far ahead you are on your release and your Shen when Victor's got his final upgrade and Spirit's as big as he is on Graves. Like these are insanely good team fighting champions.
I think as well.
Yeah, go on.
KT, when we watch it again, we'll see if they ping it out. But I don't think they notice Marin's even TPing.
Yeah.
Because them engaging is what puts
they
them
funnel
in
into the river.
position. So we just watch it through. And was there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say you do have to really respect Africa in this, because there's a lot of times, and I know how hard it is that when you're behind to make the proactive plays yourself, even when you're behind, and realizing what ones you can make and what ones you can't make is quite a real kind of test of your strength as a team, as a shot caller, as whatever the case may be. But their ability to find these, we saw it in the last game too with the Elysian insect kicks into one fights, even when they were like 8, 9, 10k down with like double Infernal against them, and they're still winning some fights. So I think their ability to find these fights, even when they fall significantly behind, is real kind of a huge win for them in terms of their strength as a team.
Yeah, so I'll just play out to see as it happens. So they
haven't noticed yet. They're still funneling forwards. They're in like the worst possible location right now.
Which puts this.
It's free man E, and then knocks Death, and there's a free Baron. So
it's just a lot of it comes down to lack of like respect. They think
for sure
Spirit's too far up because they haven't thought about the fact that Marin could be even.
And this is like classic KT, really. This is classic Malta shot calling. Like he plays such a like hard and fast snowball style game, but very often with KT especially, you see them skipping out really important steps like the vision control. They often make like the most proactive, aggressive move they possibly can, but they haven't like gone through all the steps of like pushing the waves and then going out to clear vision and making sure there are no TP wards and properly taking control. Like very often when we see KT pushing up to towers, there are pink wards in their jungle that they just haven't gone and cleared, for example.
And I think just after that Baron occurred, what we saw Elise do, which is a lot of teams at regional level won't recognise this, is Elise didn't try and steal the Baron or anything like this. She went immediately mid and pushed out as much as she could, and actually pushed the wave all the way to Africa Inhib Tower, which in turn reduces the amount of waves that Africa have access to during the Baron buff duration. And that's exactly what you want to do against Baron buff. You want to limit the amount of waves that the opposing team with the Baron buff has to siege with. But Africa right now, the gold lead's 2k, but that means nothing. Now they're able to siege. Like they were a siege comp that wasn't able to siege, or they weren't able to open up properly. And now they're able to siege. They've got all the tools there with the Gragas disengage, the Graves' ability to take down towers super fast, the Jin's ability to zone, Zyra and Victor exactly the same. They can actually siege and take these towers very, very comfortably.
And when they can group up and siege like this, because they have like the tempo advantage in terms of being able to push side waves in and forcing people to respond to them, you don't care if the Ashe Arrow is there because you have a massive Gragas in the way. Like the Ashe into Jhin counter matchup suddenly isn't important because you have an entire team to block for the Jhin, so your sieges become really easy, and your damage to towers and your ability to force people off the towers become insanely strong.
So now they just do a sort of by the numbers push in terms of pushing down mid lane, pushing into the jungle while one person gets the wave it.
Yeah, they've got a ZZ Rock portal mid. Wait, have they? Wait, they don't have it in their items. What's that in? Oh no, is that a pink ward on top of?
It's a pink
ward
with a blue
plant?
ward on top of it.
Yeah. It's a pink ward and a Zyra plant. I thought it was a ZZ Rock. Wow.
It does look very much like one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there you go. You saw that Kramer was able to just open up Jinol, and there's no Ashe Arrow punish. There's no way to interrupt it. There's no Gragas to dash in and throw a cast. There's like what can Shen do in this situation? Like maybe he can block some of the Jinol shots, but he's trying to clear out the side waves. So their siege just becomes super simple.
Just defending the indefensible.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no reason for them to.
Yeah, like it's an inner tower against a Baron buff team. Why do you care?
I think this is a good kind of a pointer for any kind of regional team or teams that are lower than LCK level, which is most of us. You really have to think that when you are significantly behind, even the best teams throw leads. Even they make mistakes that can turn the swing the game back in the opposing team's favor or back in your favor. And all it is looking for those and exploiting those, to kind of understanding how you fully exploit those to turn games like this around, and not defending what you can't defend. And you still have chances in these games, even against the very best teams in the world. So imagine how many mistakes like your regional league opponents make, that you could capitalize on.
So what is it that KT do now to get back in this game? Are they just entirely reliant on picks and just a freaking mistakes, or will they have a chance in a more standard 5v5 when Ash can stay at the back and do like some consistent damage with all the shields?
Like Max said, all the gold right now is still on Shen and Elise, and not enough on Orianna and Ash to be able to cut through Gragas quickly enough to be able to survive or negate the burst that comes out of Graves, Jin and Victor, and it's very tough for them to do that kind of, with regards to keeping their carries safe from that. So,
I mean, right now they're trying to force a 5v5 play. I don't know if that's gonna do that well for them. Jin manages to get the dragon, Gragas dies, so something's gone pretty well. I don't even know how that happened.
We'll go and look at it again, but let's go back and look. I just wanted to make sure we saw.
On the face of it, forcing a 5v5 against this comp over an Ocean Drake 31 minutes into the game seems like it does not seem like a good idea. It really doesn't.
So Ori's completed the voice staff fairly recently, which
right, yeah, Victor doesn't have his.
Victor doesn't have his. That's a very aggressive flank to begin with.
Okay.
And
someone go for the midway?
Just assuming that they win a 5v5, right?
Yeah, which I think is a fair assumption. Again. But they can afford to be patient here. Like, you don't really care about this Ocean Drake. Sure, take the Ocean Drake. We'll just disrupt your backs, and then we'll take your mid tower, because you'll have to go for our top tower. I think the Jin ulti coming out this early is problematic, because now the Jin is so far away from the fight. Like, they have no Jin there. Jin has done nothing except for shoot Shen with his ulti in this entire fight, which allows the Gragas to go down.
Both because Maren... Right, I'll just jump back again. Because Maren waited on the Gragas barrel, both Deft and Pawn flash away.
Oh, the extra
that
auto
attack.
attack.
That one auto.
Every Gragas does the extra auto attack.
That one auto honestly cost them the team fight, because you pushed both the carries in and it just died.
Yeah, and Graves and Victor immediately blew their ults after that, and they just didn't get onto Deft.
If you don't immediately burst the Orianna or the Ashe with your Victor ult, the Graves ult, the Jin ult, their DPS or their ability to put out sustained damage is better than Afrika's, but there is so many kind of pieces to that puzzle that you've got to avoid before you're able to use your DPS.
Yeah, I'm really surprised KT managed to take a fight there. Really surprised. But Maren's kicking himself.
But because of the in-hit pressure, they don't really lose much for it.
Yeah, so, I mean, they could have just squeezed them after the dragon there and tried to prolong that as much as possible.
Well, so all I mean is the point that I'm making is that if he doesn't auto there and he does ult and they do win the fight, because of the timing they did it, if they win the fight, they get loads and maybe even end the game because of the timing of the wave. And if they lose the fight, then they just lose a couple of people.
Yeah, but they lose time on the inhib, which is really important. Yeah, I think if they win the fight, then Maren, I think he had TP up, would just TP and end.
So if you're going to pick a time to lose a fight, that's fairly...
It's not a bad one.
Yeah.
Especially when Baron isn't up and Elder Dragon's not on the map yet. Like, over an Ocean Drake, alright.
Yeah, I think, like you said, stalling on that Ocean Drake would have been the best possible play. There's not even any need to necessarily engage.
They could have just run up mid. Like, They had mid positioning, I think. Oh no, they were funneling in from the jungle. But they could have just like walked out and gone up mid. That would have been fine as well.
So it's the same decision making though that's got them back into this game, which I think is quite interesting with the way a lot of teams play. Is that earlier on the decisions that they were making that did end up winning them fights are like more risky decisions, but then the second that they become in control, the riskier decision sort of isn't worth it. You need to like recalibrate.
Any kind of trade is beneficial to the team that's behind, right? And that's always the case, because the person that they kill is much more value than the person you kill of theirs, but due to the kind of sheer gold difference between the two teams. So when you are significantly behind, if you take any kind of trade, it's very valuable to you. But once you get a lead, you still can't continue to make this like gun-ho kind of hope for a trade or hope for something that's pretty even when you're actually in a position where you should be getting more than that. Because the value out of that trade is nowhere near as much as it was when they were 7k down.
Yeah. So there's just no reason risking a sort of game ending fight, because if you don't, you can end the game in like less risky way.
The percentage of the type of plays that you can take is reduced by the gold lead that you have. So the higher your gold lead is, the less risk you have to take to end the game, and the further behind you are, the more risk you've got to take to get back into the game. And you've got to really balance that and find that balance that, okay, we're this far behind, we can take 70-30 plays at most to try and get into that.
And that's a really deceptive balance to strike. Like it's a skill that takes a lot of time to develop, because people have to really understand the comps they're playing to be able to understand if they actually are behind at all. Because you could be playing a game where, like we played a game in a scrim earlier, where they spent the entire game sieging us, and we spent the entire game blowing our ultis consistently on cooldown just to clear waves while our Camille split pushed. And it felt like we were getting wrecked in the game, and afterwards the players said they hated every moment of the game and it just felt awful. It felt like they were losing the whole game, but we won because that was our win condition, to stall while Camille wins the game. So like it's really easy to feel super behind in those situations, but you have to and like that, like I said, that's something that just takes a long time to learn how to evaluate that that properly, so that you can then decide what level of like risk is appropriate.
It's just a case of full understanding of your own composition versus their composition, and when you're strong, when you're not, if you're going to get considerably stronger than them as time progresses, if they're going to hit breakpoints that are actually tougher for you to deal with as time progresses, because that influences whether you should make those aggressive plays now or whether you can actually stall on those and make them later with a higher percentage of those working out.
And also, just quickly before we do the setup for this, the changing it during a game, I think, is a skill that you very often only see in the sort of best team in the world type thing. So, for example, in this game, they're going for the like crazy 1v1 with Spirit in the early game when they're so far behind is worth it, and then the second you get ahead,
it becomes less and less worth it. Yeah, exactly.
Like the feel of a game is very contagious. So
like
you very often easy to get dragged into like a very chaotic style or something like that, or if you're ahead or you're really jubilant, or like you're really far ahead and then suddenly you throw a lead, it's super hard to switch back from being the proactive playmaker to being like, okay, reset, we're back to step one.
So the setup for this fight then, they see Myron split pushing, has teleport, but teleport does take quite a while to get there. Is there anything else to go into? Obviously, he's got loads of wards to teleport onto, but when they're not the ones making the proactive play, the teleport flank is not really going to have the same sort of impact. Is there anything else to go into in terms of the setup for this before we just watch it through?
I think it seems like Spirit's too close. It's hard to tell.
It's just been Ash arrow.
Yeah, where was that from though? Was that
from I'll just jump back and show you.
Okay. Because it's quite deceptive how. Okay, so he should have flashed that, I think.
They've managed to stall enough time for the teleport to come in, no problem. So
It was a very
they're
defensive
probably at a
teleport.
slight advantage right now.
Yeah, there is no backup for Gragas though, because Gragas' teleport was
Yeah.
away from the team. Because they could attack the teleport as 5, and there wasn't like any kind of pincer motion because they could still disengage, moving towards bot lane. Then Gragas takes unnecessary damage there, realistically.
Yeah, he's going to regen a lot though. I mean,
Yeah.
both teams are regenning a lot because they all
Yeah,
have
it's
ocean.
double ocean versus single ocean.
Everyone's just clearing each other's minion waves, playing on each other's side of the map. But Afrika's maintained the Baron control here, which is the key part.
And also their wave is closer to pushing on the tower.
And KT had to use the Ash Arrow, which is a huge part of how they actually contest Baron fights.
Equally, if you look at the wave setup too, there's a big wave that's going to be pushing into bot side for Afrika, whereas there's a big wave that's going to be pushing for KT towards Afrika. But because you've got Baron position, you can clear that wave easier too, because you're nearer to that wave.
It's not pressuring a tower for ages.
Yeah, no one's going to touch that. There's no way you can clear that Afrika wave.
I'm really surprised Smeb hasn't gone back. He has his Shen ulti and his TP. They're going to try and force a fight here, I guess. Committed to this now, which is surprising to me. Because this is not a comp that you want to funnel into a pit against.
Situation again, because there's quite a lot going on.
This is not a situation that you want to funnel into a Baron pit against, and they're going to be giving up a bot inhibitor.
The second Ash Arrow.
They were waiting for the cooldown. Ash Arrow, maybe?
Yeah. There's 2 Ash Arrows in one fight. Oh.
Yeah, wow. But this isn't a good situation anymore.
And now you're in a real tough one.
Now they get
that wave solo took the entire tower. That's how powerful slow pushes can be at this point in the game. If no one can deal with it, you can take the whole inhib tower purely off sieging without anyone there, which is crazy, but very realistic.
Very realistic.
Well,
oh
my god!
My days.
Did you see? Wait, after this, I'll just talk about a very unlucky play from the side of Afrika. Okay, cool. Do we want to watch that whole situation again, or?
Yeah, well, I guess you can watch after Spirit's originally Ash Arrowed and the TP comes in, kind of around there, where we see what the wave setup's like.
Just quickly before we watch. Look at the Raptor camp spawn time in this play. So
no! Does he get?
No!
Oh,
it's literally
that's so painful.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I just had to quickly point
out.
No,
I wouldn't have noticed that.
It's like, why is he not
coming? I would not have noticed that.
Okay, so it's literally 2 minutes or something.
Yeah, it's a very long fight, but it's one that okay. So initially, you see Gragas in the furthest point away from Baron, right? He's got the teleport up. Baron's the neutral that they're contesting, so he's in the side lane trying to push out a wave or set up a slow push so that he can TP in and create a huge push that will go into KT in the end, which is exactly what he does. I think we can pause it probably when the teleport comes out from Gragas.
Sure.
You see it in just a second.
So he goes back to get the home guards and now starts TPing.
And spend any gold he's sat on and then starts TPing. Yeah. So no, yeah, it's fine. So effectively now KT have got a natural slow push away from them in the top lane, so that's going to be pushing to Afrika. But that wave has no pressure yet. That's nowhere near taking any kind of objective. Whereas if you look at the kind of the antagonist of this, which is Afrika's slow push in bot side, that's already kind of in line with Gromp. So it's only got the distance between like a tier 1 and the inhib tower to actually meet, and because it looks from here, I can't really tell from it, but it looks like a very slow push in as much as there isn't a significant amount of strength in the wave compared to the KT wave, which makes it push even slower, which means more waves will meet up with that wave before it hits the tower than if it was a strong slow push, like a 4 minion versus 2 minion kind of slow push, which would meet within the next couple of waves, but wouldn't be anywhere near as effective if it does meet. So realistically, for Afrika, they're perfectly fine to stall this out for as long as possible, whereas Katie are on a clock to make this happen because that slow push will meet, and Smeb effectively wants to be there for that. So what you would see, the real thing here is that Africa have got the Baron positioning, because if they didn't, then Katie could control the Baron area, Smeb could recall, and then he could go clear out that slow push, and then he'd have ult or TP to get back into the fight. Whereas because his team don't have the Baron positioning, Africa, as soon as Smeb recalls, can turn on to the Baron, force Smeb to either ult or TP in, and he may be too late for the Baron, or he's just left that slow push anyway. Right, so it's very, very tough for Katie to answer. So it's realistically, Africa have got Katie on a timer at this point.
Okay, I'll just play it out, and you can keep talking about it, both of you, as it goes through, because it's such a long.
It's very long drawn out. Like I said in the first time we saw this bit, because they were able to collapse onto the teleport, Greg takes a huge amount of damage.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why Katie aren't really committing to much, right? Why Africa aren't committing to much. They're just playing the kind of back and forth seesaw game where they're trying to avoid being engaged upon, but trying to also avoid giving Katie positioning over the Baron side of the map. So they keep kind of posturing between clearing waves and back to the Baron, clearing waves back to the Baron. And if they can keep eyes on Smeb indefinitely, then they know exactly when Smeb is going to recall and when he's not. And if he can't recall, they know this wave's going to crash.
And so the reason that he doesn't just recall is because they're still staying close enough that if he just runs away and recalls, they'll engage?
As soon as he recalls, what will happen is Africa will turn onto the Baron, and it'll force KT to step into these areas of darkness that they currently don't know to check this Baron. And if Africa are doing the Baron, then it would also force Smeb to either TP in or use his ult. Either one is non-productive for him because he's not going to be able to clear that super minion wave out. That slow push wave out in the time that Africa are going to do the Baron. Yeah. So that's the kind of situation that Smeb's in right now with regards to. Okay, I can't recall because of this, and this. Right now it would be fine. He could recall right now. He could push to top side and have recalled as they pushed in there.
He could dash over that wall and just recall straight away.
But he didn't, and as a result, they
second dash over.
Yeah. So this is KT again, being slightly over-aggressive. They don't need to make this aggressive fight. They don't need to try this. They won when they were able to remove the slow push. Then Smeb could go bot side, set up a slow push of his own. They've got a slow push that's already going to push into top side, and then they can posture. They go back to posturing for Baron again. Once Smeb has done
Smeb was if when KT had got Baron positioning, Smeb could recall and clear out the wave, then they would actually be in the advantage position, right? Because the shoe would be on the other foot. They would be in the exact opposite. They would have Baron control and a slow push.
And they've still got the slow push going in top side too.
Yeah, exactly. I think the reason Smeb doesn't is because I guess that he's worried that the second he recalls, his front line is super squishy. Like what we saw earlier is that because there's so much damage from Afrika, even if he does channel ulti onto someone, there's a really high risk of them dying before the channel completes. And if that happens, then like the game is basically over.
Yeah.
One more thing as well to complete the tilting Wraith spawn is that they don't even know that Morin's there.
No, so it would be a really good engage onto the backline too. Especially onto Pawn, who gets a 3-man shockwave off and instantly kills Zyra.
The Redemption would have had time to kill Zyra, to heal the Zyra if Marin had got through as well. She would have survived for long enough, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
MVP, Razor Beaks.
Wow. Yeah, Razor Beaks.
And somehow KT, out of this really negative situation that they were in with regards to they had a slow push against them, have managed to turn this into a really positive one. Where
do you think this is the best play? Siege going for the inhib instead of the Baron?
Are they still just worried about the Victor first? He's still got ult back.
I think because they're the comp that has 1-4 pressure, Baron being on the map can actually favour them in a lot of instances when Shen has globals, but because he doesn't right now, it's quite difficult.
It's just the order.
Right, I think I was just mistaken in like my evaluation of how much time they had.
Long they're going to have.
If you're going to be able to take both, then it's better to do inhib first and then Baron, because the Baron is obviously on the way out. But if you just do the Baron, then this can't happen. They can't get an Elder Drake.
Yeah.
Whether or not you care about the Elder Drake that much at this stage in the game is another thing, but
They can
I don't think they're going to be able to take it, actually.
Yeah, they're gonna have to peel off this.
Yeah. In which case, it's a really big win. And KT has double Ocean Drake, so they're fully healed up by now. They don't even need to reset that badly because they have a slow push. They have a super,
and it's going to die
super
before Spray
wave
gets
coming
in.
Oh man, that's rough. I was
so
so
much
sure
from
Afrika was
those.
going to win.
Literally, those razor beaks then cost them so much.
That cost a huge fight there, possibly. Obviously, we still don't know exactly what would have happened if he did get over the wall into Pawn and how much damage Pawn would have got off.
With him in the background,
he might have stunned him prior to the shockwave going off, right? And if he stunned him prior to the shockwave, then that would have been super good for
or
Afrika.
even the stuff after the shockwave, like the extra QW. But they shouldn't have ever been in this situation because he shouldn't have autoed earlier, and then they might have won the game.
Exactly.
So, it's all from his fault, really.
There's always a lot of like hindsights and what ifs and all this kind of thing.
Hindsight's 2020.
In the heat of the game, it's very, very tough to find the exact okay, I shouldn't have autoed there, if you know what I mean. As opposed to the optimal decisions.
I bet his coaches saw it though.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure he would have got a grilling for it after the game, but. And now you're in a real tough situation because you're now being manipulated by minion waves, alongside the fact that it's hard for you to engage on KT because KT have Elder.
3 Ocean Drakes essentially now.
Yeah, any kind of advantage you did have in the straight 5v5s or 4v4s, you don't now.
So many shields as well. They literally don't care. Like, Deft can walk up with both the shields on him, just tank hits, or Pawn can do the same, then regen with the Ocean Drake if he takes any damage.
Normally it's quite good to spread your Baron as thinly as possible to get it kind of active in all 3 lanes, and that's why Smeb's been posturing around mid side. They've also got pressure in top side because they got the init Brett, so the super minion wave going to be pushing in there shortly, and as a result you can kind of maximize the effect that your Baron has, while also using the Elder Drake as a kind of zone-in tool, because they don't want to fight you yet. They're trying to just wait for the duration and not lose too much during that Elder Drake duration, and that's exactly what's happening.
It's just really rough, isn't it? So they're going to try and wait off Elder and then go for a fight, even though it's going to cost them 3 inhibs.
It's rough. Like, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't right here.
And obviously the second you've got the true damage ban, it's like the front line doesn't really matter anymore, does it?
Yeah, not at all. Oh my god. Deft just flashing forward and soloing the mid laner. Jeez.
Well, I thought that game was going to be not really worth looking through when it got to like 19 minutes and they were already pushing an inhib.
Yeah.
These games are very, very back and forth, but all the games, in fact. And Afrika must be have to have a very positive mental attitude to come out of these games with being able to look forward, because in the previous game we saw them fall significantly behind. They made a couple of good plays. They got the Baron and they were looking to get the Elder Drake, and Rumble stole the Elder Drake, if you remember correctly. That turned that game. And then this game is one where it's demoralizing, you fall behind early, but then you realize what your comp is and you bring it back through making a series of good plays. But then equally, you're still not enough to get you the win that you want. So it's hard mentally to be able to do that. But I think for sure there's real bright sparks within Afrika and the macro game.
And as you mentioned before, their willingness to pull the trigger in...
Yeah, finding these very, very narrow windows that you get when you're behind to get back into these games against some of the best teams. And okay, they didn't quite see out the win, but I think there's a lot of positives that they could take away from this with regards to they saw the windows that they had and they used them very, very well.
They just need to chill out a bit when they do actually have the lead.
Yeah, I think answers in draft are also quite important too. I don't think there was many answers that Africa basically could have had to not fall behind in the early game. There wasn't any real positive plays that they could make of their own to have a situation where they didn't fall behind to the Elise Shen, and then Elise Shen transfer that lead to the rest of the map. So perhaps something early, like stronger early with regards to the draft to facilitate their ability to counteract that to an extent, as opposed to just acknowledge it exists but watch it happen anyway, and then know that you've got to come back from a 7 or 8k deficit. Whereas if perhaps if Africa matched in some kind of way and were only 2-3k behind, their gold swing would have been much more kind of influential than it ended up being.
And rather than just like these 5 specific champions, is there a way that you can sort of see that disadvantage from champions that are coming? Is it just due to the fact that they pick a bot lane which they know is going to get pushed around early, and then they see the Elise, but once you see the Elise and you've already got a losing bot lane, you can't help but get counter top, so it's always going to be a rough situation? Or is there sort of rules that you can do in terms of for anyone watching this when they draft, just need to be aware that this is a possibility?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think Elise is a hard one, and you see it banned a lot in Korea because it can do this. Because you can early rotate Elise and just gain pressure where you want to in the early levels, and how well teams like KT use early pressure to turn into a massive mid-game lead. The value of that champion is significantly higher. Look how much damage that champion did at the end of the game. This is an early game champion that's best insane. For the first 5 levels, and she does the most damage in the game. And that champion, although it's not highly valued in the West, in Korea, kind of specifically, it's very highly valued because its ability to do this. Of course, it's a risky strategy because if it doesn't do this, then most other junglers are more valuable. But if it does do this, then there's not a huge amount of counterplay, realistically.
I think one thing that I guess I could give as advice for people learning to draft, or reflecting on this specific game, is that whenever you draft, you need to really, really be thinking about how the way that all of these specific champions interact with each other, both the ones that you're picking and the ones that are still available to the enemy, right? So one that I would say from this game is that if you take Jhin and Graves in your first 3 rotation of picks, you should know that you need a top laner that is A, really good at frontlining, and B, really good at engaging. And that's not something that you typically go to Shen for. Obviously, Shen's a good frontline tank, but his engage is very limited. And for that reason, you don't see him very often with Graves. And also, you don't really pair Shen with Jhin because you need a hyper carry type ADC to be able to put the Shen ulti on so that they can frontline, because there's no use Shen teleporting into a fight when Jin's ulting, right? You also need to think about what the enemy can combine with it. For example, there are loads of classic ones with Shen, like the Rengar Shen, the Vladimir Shen, the Orianna Shen. I think that either not picking the Jhin here realistically, because I don't think it's a good matchup into the Ashe. I think they counterpick themselves really hard in the bot lane, or banning the Shen would have made this draft a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. I think even something like an Ezreal would have been much more.
I think Ezreal would have been the perfect pick. I think Ezreal would have been really good here. I feel I get that they're trying to be cute with the Zyra first pick, and I think that's cool. That they scouted out that Marta doesn't play MF. If that is actually the case, and that's why they did it, then that's really cool. I think that the Jhin was getting a bit too cute. I think the Jhin was a head scratcher for me personally.
Yeah, for sure. But I do feel like it was tough from pick ban to not to win the game. It was never tough to win the game for Africa, but it was tough to establish any kind of early game strength. And why would you go into a game versus KT where you're going to be at a deficit come 15-20 minutes and hope that you can get to a certain point where you can make these very intricate kind of abuses of windows, or these tiny windows that you get, being sure that you can kind of capitalize on them to get back into the game, Whereas, why not execute a strategy where you can match and you can come out nearly even, and then still execute these intricate plays and gain a significant lead, rather than using your best part of your game just to get back into the game as opposed to accelerating you forward. And that for me is a tough one to kind of get my head around. But of course, it's very, very tough. It's easy to sit here and say you should have done this, you should have done that, and they'll have done the same after the game, right? As all pro teams do. You go into the game after and you say you go into your replay analysis after and you think, okay, well perhaps we should have done this, perhaps we should have done that, and that's how you progress and that's how you move forward.
Yeah.
But that was a real downfall for Africa in this whole series, I think. That they fell behind significantly in games 2 and 3, even after they won game 1.
Yeah. And that process is made very difficult in scrims when you don't, like, if you aren't scrimming opponents that are as good as KT, because there are very few teams and very few junglers especially that will punish you as hard as Score will in the early game if you pick a comp like this.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like we saw in Game 2, especially, we saw it here too, but Game 2 is very potent, is their ability to transition a lead from one area of the map to another, and turn that into an objective lead very, very well and very, very smoothly with the transitions that they make, compared to other teams that you may be scrimming on a regular basis, right? Their ability to transition one cannon wave that they've pushed out in bot lane to a tower in mid lane, or their ability to transition your tier 2 mid into your tier 2 bot by taking the shorter path because they've gained vision control, and how fluently and seamlessly those transitions are may not be something you come across every day to be able to practice against. So that may be why that they didn't think that KT might get this as much of a lead as they did by using that comp. They've probably played against a lot of Elises and felt that okay, Elise can get a lead and will get a lead, but it's not going to be something that we can't deal with come later in the game. But when that leads 7 or 8k, which is probably emphasized when you're playing versus KT, it might have been 2 or 3k against a lesser opponent, right? But against KT, the lead's much more kind of huge than you maybe anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, at this level, teams have such different and pronounced play styles. Like, every team in the LCK has a very, very specific play style. And I think more than any other team in the league, KT is the early game team. So it's really hard to get a read on this type of thing. Like you were saying, we've played against Elise before. Elise can do only so much, but when she gets to late game, she's going to be useless. But like, not if she has 8 kills, she's not.
Not if she does more damage than anyone in the game,
Yeah.
even though it's that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that stat we see on the screen right there, at least doing the most damage in the game, is very, very, very rare. And all you can do is give credit to Score for being able to do
you're
that.
Super proud of that. In a game that went so long, you look at that and you're like, I done good this game.
my jungler just looked over and was amazed that this existed. He couldn't believe that at least did the most damage in the game. But yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, cool. Is that it then?
Yeah, I think so. I think that rounds out tonight.
Right, so I'm going to do a little outro, which I haven't been doing previously, but I will do from now on. So thanks very much for everyone watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe on Facebook. And if you want to watch live episodes, the Twitch is in the description. It's twitch.tv/ferndog16. Another thing that I thought would be cool to do, if anyone has any specific games that they see, either from national leagues or from pro play, and they think it'd be really interesting for us to go over these games in more detail, feel free to tweet at anyone, and we'll try and get to those games as well.